Welcome to our first of 11 webinars in our 2024 Women in Leadership Executive Speaker Series, with this one specifically focused on women leaders in higher education. I'm Dr. Susan Madsen, founding director of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, and I'm also the Karen Haight Huntsman Endowed Professor of Leadership in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. And I'm the host today and will be the panel moderator. And this event furthers the mission of the Utah Women in Leadership Project, which is to strengthen the impact of Utah girls and women. And we serve Utah and its residents by first, producing relevant, trustworthy, and applicable research. Second, creating and gathering valuable resources. And third, convening trainings and events that inform, inspire, and ignite growth and change for all Utahns. And I would like to thank our sponsors, the Utah Education Network, UEN, the John M. Huntsman School of Business, and USU Extension. So I want to get started today by introducing my two friends and guests today who will be talking with and interacting with. I'm excited about that. First, Dr. Deneece Huftalin. She serves as the president of Salt Lake Community College, Utah's most diverse higher education institution, which serves nearly 50,000 students per year at 9 locations in Salt Lake County. Dr. Huftalin is guided by the principle that college should be available to all and believes that SLIC offers a place for everybody. So she has implemented several groundbreaking programs designed to promote affordability and access, and she prioritizes geographic access to higher education. And she also holds a master's degree from UCLA and a doctorate in education, leadership, and policy from the University of Utah. Welcome so much, Deneece.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. It's wonderful to be with these two remarkable women. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. And I'll introduce my friend Mindy Benson. And she serves as the president of Southern Utah University, where she prioritizes the needs of faculty and staff and students, mental health resources, and culture on her campus. And so she also focuses on strengthening community and university partnerships. And prior to her appointment as president, she was at SUU, and she served as vice president of alumni and community relations. And she has advanced through a variety of positions at SUU, including executive director of alumni relations and director of student life and leadership. And she is a professional event consultant and planner throughout the nation with broad producing experience and has done hundreds of high-level productions. And she holds a bachelor's of science in zoology. I didn't know that. And a master's of arts in professional communication. I knew about the communication. I did not know about the zoology. So thank you.
I can identify any mussel or any bug you need.
Penny.
It's really helpful.
I love that. Well, thanks for joining us today. And for those of you listening in, you are welcome to put your questions. I have plenty of questions, but I want to work in some of the questions of those of you listening in. So you can do that in the chat. That will come to us as panelists and my moderator or in the Q&A, and we'll be watching those. So I want to start today to have each of you take just a few minutes and have us give you some background on your career path. How did you move through your career to get to where you are now? And Deneece, I'm going to be informal if that's okay and call you by your first name.
Yes,
Deneece,
please.
Can you please start and then we'll go to Mindy.
Happy to do that. So I grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and went to the University of Utah right out of high school. And one of the things I recognized as an undergrad was I finally got very involved and found kind of my tribe at the U of U. High school wasn't a great experience for me, but the college experience was remarkable. So I kind of started blossoming, and I ended up, when we graduated, moving with a roommate to Palo Alto, and I got a job at Stanford University in their admissions office. And honestly, that's the beginning of a trajectory that has taken me wonderful places. it suddenly dawned on me, very entry level position, but it opened this world that you could live in higher ed your entire life if you wanted to. You could stay on a college campus. So that's how I started. And I just I got my master's at UCLA. I moved back to the U for a while. And my path has always been through the student affairs side of things. So I was, director of advising, and then I was the dean of students, and then I became the vice president of student affairs. And being a president wasn't really on my radar. I was more interested in student development, student leadership opportunities. But, I just fell into this entry level role, and suddenly the world opened up in terms of where you could have a professional life and career, which has just been an amazing opportunity. So I always tell people, you still have to get the right credentials. You still have to learn and be ready, but you never know when you're going to find something that really ignites your passion and you can really just jump in.
And from the research I've done through the years, and I have a whole book, my first book was on university presidents and their pathways. And it is interesting often that the first job you jump, and I think that was for you. I don't think it was for Mindy, maybe, but the first job sometimes, not just in higher ed, but in other careers, really does kind of put you in an industry oftentimes that keeps you there. And I love that. There is something, Deneece, about college campuses, no matter where I'm at in the world, I don't care what kind of college, I get goosebumps. It's just like, I love being on a campus, no matter where it is. I love that.
Yep, me too.
Mindy, same question.
I had a very non-traditional path to the presidency. And like Deneece, I did not aspire to be here. I came up through the student affairs side, and Deneece and I actually worked together in that clear back then. I actually grew up on the campus of Southern Utah University. My dad was the director of student affairs when I was a little girl back in the 70s. And he retired in the 80s. And I had grown up on this campus. I worked at the Utah Shakespeare Festival. I knew I was coming to SUU. And I graduated from SUU and vowed I would never come back to Cedar City, and left and moved to Salt Lake. I worked in
Salt Lake.
Yeah, I worked in Salt Lake for a couple of years, and I was going to conquer the world. And my mentor, Sterling Church, called out of the blue and said, a person has left in student activities. Would you come and take the job for an emergency hire? And I said, absolutely, but I'm only going to stay 3 years. And that was 28 years ago. And I've conquered the world in other ways. As you said, I was zoology and I was pre-med, but I got involved as a college student and recognized the impact and the power that had. And that changed my trajectory and changed my life. And I came up through the student affairs side and then the alumni side, but I've done major national events, the Republican National Convention 4 different times, and the presidential inaugurations, and toured with major touring acts. I have some really fun stories that I can't ever tell anyone. And people always said, what does event management have to do with the president? When I was applying, high stakes, high profile, high pressure, those events were, and the president sees the very same way. So that is my path. And it's a privilege to be here and take care of these places that we all love so much.
Oh, thank you so much. Deneece, back to you. You already mentioned that you really didn't think about being a president or moving up the line. You just want to serve students and really not doing exactly what you've been doing. What motivated you, I guess, to begin the next steps to take on leadership and end up where you are? What was that motivation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what happened for me was I was really enjoying my time. I was in Chicago for several years and California for several years. And my husband actually brought us back to Salt Lake for a job that he took. And Salt Lake Community College at the time, this was the early 90s, was hiring rapidly. We had rapid growth. And growing up here, I didn't even know about Salt Lake Community College. It was not on my radar, right? The University of Utah was the only college I knew about. And so I got a job here early on when we came back after I'd been at Northwestern and at Harper Community College, and got a job as the director of academic advising in the early 90s. And I loved that job. It was my first job where I could really supervise people, which is really critical.
Yeah.
Supervising personnel, if you don't have a portfolio that allows you to do that, it's really hard to advance, because that's ends up being what we all do when we go higher and higher. What we're doing really is people management, a lot of it.
Yeah.
So that first job really gave me the supervisory experience. And then again, because of where we were in the context of the college, my portfolio just kept getting bigger because we were growing, we were hiring more staff. So I became, my goal when I was 25 was to be the dean of students. And if I got to be a dean of students, I'd nirvana. Well, I was the dean of students at like 32. I became the dean of students, which was great. I loved it. But then I started seeing, first of all, one motivation was other people telling me that they wanted me to
Yes.
take on more roles. So outside attribution about my qualities really helps. But then I also started seeing things that people that supervising me were doing that I didn't like and that I didn't
Oh,
want to replicate. And I thought I could do it differently, and I thought I could do it more effectively. And so there was some outside motivation early in my career, but then I think I had some real internal motivation to tackle issues and problems and develop the college in a way that I saw as maybe more effective. And so that was the motivation to become the vice president for student affairs. And then I had to get my PhD because I just knew as a VP, it's better to have your PhD. So I was well suited for the presidency when it came along because I had already earned my advanced degree. But I think both internal and external motivation is how I would describe that.
I love that. And women, I've interviewed women presidents and different things for years. And sometimes people need women's more than men. We need someone to express their confidence in us. Even though we get more responsibilities, people are giving us more responsibilities. Sometimes we don't see that as confidence in us when it is.
Yeah.
When you just naturally are. Mindy, you have interacted with your career with so many leaders in the work that you did before, really coming to USU and moving up the line. Was that a motivation for you to just work with leaders? Give us a little bit more there.
I always enjoy working with good leaders and strong leaders, and I find myself moving to leaders and trying to glean information and how they do what they do and how they motivate and inspire others. So that naturally is part of who I am. But I also think my family is very much a bunch of leaders. I am the youngest of 5 kids, and my sister was the first female student body president at SUU 40 years from the day I was inaugurated as president of SU.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
So she was a female opening that door for me 40 years before
You saw
I
her
got
do
here.
that.
Yeah, I watched her do that. I watched her walk through that door. I was probably 12 at the time, maybe, and I was so inspired by her. And I came from a family of strong leaders, but especially a strong mother and strong sisters. So leadership is just who we are and what we do. And I don't think we ever have sought for it. It's just where we end up because of the personalities, and we're willing to take things on, and we are willing to do those things, and we are the natural leaders. So I tend to end up in those places, but it's because I work my heart out to get to those places. It isn't just because I happen to get to those. It's because I put in everything that I had. And as Deneece did, everything that you have, and people recognize that and give you more and give you opportunities and recognize that you're good with people or willing to take on projects with people or can deal with hard situations.
So you were blessed, though, to be able to have a mother and a sister and probably see some women leaders around you. There are people that are listening in today that may not really have had that experience, where the people they see leading are really men. And you see that a lot in Utah. But even if you have one woman in your life, or you see people, mayors or whatever, that gives you a vision. So I think that's so so much of a blessing in some ways to be in spaces where you can see. Mindy, I'm going to go to you for this next one. So through the years, you did build confidence, resiliency, that's a big thing, and developed leadership skills. Do you think you developed those, characteristics or capacities or abilities more in one place than another, or do you see that just kind of coming through all of your positions in your career?
A little of both.
Mm.
I think it takes time. It takes you being willing to nurture those opportunities, and when you are challenged, to learn from it and grow from it instead of run away from it. That helps build some of the resiliency. And each one of the places in my career, be it working with student leaders and spending all night on elections, or watching students develop who they are and what they wanted to do with the rest of their lives and find their passion, that taught me a different skill set versus working with alumni and building alumni programs and building communications skills. It all taught me a different skill set.
And all of them are important, right?
They are. And one of the first things I teach an event management class on campus. And one of the first things I teach that class is nothing is a crisis. There will be times every day in your life that the world is falling apart or it didn't go as you planned. It's how you respond to it, because it's always going to come. And I think that is a grounding statement for me, and it has been for my students, that when you face hard things, are you going to fall apart, or are you going to say, I can do this and I don't have any other choice but to go through it? And that's something that I refer to often and has helped me tremendously.
I love that. Deneece, any comments here?
I just, I just resonate with what Mindy said about one of my early mentors said something to me kind of like that about crises and hard things. And he said, when something is on fire, run toward the fire. Don't run away from the fire. And I've always held that to me, because whenever I see something that's about to unfold or blow up or looks like, I just think to myself, run toward the fire. That's what you have to do. You have to run toward the fire. And typically, I too had this kind of thing. You have to just get through it, right? And if you can get through it effectively, what sometimes doesn't happen is you looking back and going, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Where did I amplify something I shouldn't have amplified? So learning from how you got through it, I think, is really important. But there's still days where I think I'm still learning. There's still days where I still am frustrated, or I still am nervous about an outcome. I still don't want to do something.
Yeah.
And I have to do it. It's still, it's still kind of heavy. And so you're still pulling from those lessons that, even when you learned it when you were 26 or 35, I'm still pulling from those lessons. You would think that I'm so old, you would think some of them would have stuck and I wouldn't have to remember, but it's a constant learning, I think.
I appreciate your running towards the fire, because a lot of times, and I do think there's been a little research in Utah about us having a bit of a passive aggressive culture. And oftentimes when you have conflict, or when there's conflict around, there's a tendency with many of us to just kind of go around it. But when you made your statement on running towards the fire, were you talking about even conflict, like trying to figure out and resolve?
Yes, not avoiding it. You can't, avoiding it's just going to make it worse.
It does.
And often if you can get into it and talk about it and deflect it or diffuse it or find an early solution, it just makes life so much easier than just trying to ignore it and hopefully it'll go away. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah, it stays. It stays. Mindy, oh, did you have something?
And I was just going to add, and often it festers if you don't deal with it, and it becomes much worse. I have, in the last 5 years, and maybe it's age and partly wisdom, but I've become so much better at having those honest, tough conversations.
It takes practice.
It takes practice, but it's liberating to be able to to have those honest conversations, and people expect that from me now versus Utah nice. Oh,
Yeah.
You-
Yeah.
Hey, since we're talking about this, I'm going to ask you a question that makes me smile. It may not be the perfect wording, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. How have you been a strong leader without alienating people or upsetting them? This is the question. We could talk about that. And then what do you do if people are unhappy? Now, I'm just going to say you have probably never made anybody unhappy, right?
oh.
You have to make people unhappy. I mean, it just comes when you're a
Yeah.
leader.
Yeah.
But what did you get used to it? Did you, I mean, what do you do to try to work through that? Or so I hope you understood why I was smiling when I
I would
asked
just
the question.
say one thing I'd learned, well, first of all, you are going to make people unhappy. And if you're
Yeah.
not making certain people unhappy, you're probably not making hard decisions and you're probably not moving things forward. So you have to just resolve yourself that no matter what you do, somebody's not going to like it.
Yeah.
What I try to
That's
do,
hard for women to do.
yeah, and what I try to do, and I'm not always successful, is try to I think one of the problems people get so mad and so upset is they don't hear from you about your reasoning. You don't explain your rationale. And I usually have a reason I make a decision. I think I'm a pretty thoughtful leader, and I think about things and then I say, okay, based on this, this, and this, we're going to do this. And just explaining that, where you're coming from, why you decided what you did, what you know to be a conflicting idea that could have worked, but why you didn't do it. I often try to unpack that very early on so that people say, I know you're not going to like this, but let me tell you why I'm doing it. What's the bigger picture? If there's an end goal, what's the political reality? If there's some kind of political thing going on, what are the personnel implications without violating any kind of privacy? But what are some of the personnel kind of nuances that you're trying to navigate? Just being honest as much as you can about your reasoning. I think it diffuses a lot of people. And I also think just over time, when people know you and trust you,
That
and you
trust.
have a good relationship with them, then when you make them upset, they don't hold it against you as much. They understand that you're doing your job. You were hired to do this job.
No. Mindy.
You have to build that trust.
Yeah.
I think that's so important to have that well of trust that you can go to. And I think one of the greatest talents or assets that I believe I have is emotional intelligence. And I didn't even recognize that until that was labeled and utilized a lot more. But I can read a room pretty well and understand how things are going to be received and craft a message accordingly. I'm always honest. I don't try to be dishonest or not sugarcoat it, but
There's angles.
I craft the message differently, knowing how people are going to receive it or react to it. And I think that helps. I don't think we pay enough attention to how great emotional intelligence can be. And I think as women, we often try to hide that emotional intelligence. I would say develop, and utilize that as often as you can.
So much research on, I mean, we are as women, often more than men, able to read the room, do those things. There's actually some genetics and socialization that play into, and those are important things to do. Those are so important. I love that. I'm going to pull a question from one of the people listening in today for next. And this one is specific about campuses, but I think, on universities and colleges, but I think it can apply to others. So if you're a new, early in your career on a campus, what this person wants to know, how do you get your first opportunity? What are some ways to get an opportunity to show that you're a leader, to have some leadership experiences? Mindy, why don't you jump on that one first? Any thoughts there?
Absolutely. I remember this moment when I was trying to be seen as the leader and how I finally got there. And that's, if you're not on the committees, volunteer.
Mm.
When you first start in a job, don't just sit back at your desk and hope that people come and find you and that you
We do
magically
that as
appear.
women.
We do. We put ourselves in that room and hope that somebody magically comes and finds us as leaders. Don't do that. Get out and go to everything and show up at everything and be the one that helps at everything and volunteer to be on committees.
Yeah.
People are always seeking people to be on committees. And as soon as they know you're willing to volunteer, they will go to you first the next time. So get out, get involved, get engaged, and you will automatically be seen as somebody who is willing, and that makes all the difference.
And committees, and some other workplaces have committees. Being a co-leader or a lead of the committee, you do lead. I mean, you're thinking about strategy, you facilitate. Man, facilitation is such a key part of leadership.
And you're seen as a campus partner that gets involved and is willing to engage in the discussions.
Yeah.
Whether you're leading on the committee or not, you're seen as a campus partner, and then you get the leadership opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just jump into that and say one of the things that made me successful as a presidential candidate here was that even though I wasn't a professor and I didn't come through the academy, I had, as the director of academic advising and dean of students, I had stayed on curriculum committees, the Gen Ed committee, the academic curriculum committee. And so I was around, faculty members. I knew the classroom experience. I knew the curriculum process. And they trusted me because I'd been in those spaces with them talking about their content knowledge. And yes, I knew student affairs, but I also was really willing to help them and learn from them about curriculum. And so I remember vividly.
Sometimes those are walls.
Yeah, they're big silos. Yes.
Yeah, but you crossed that earlier in your career.
So don't just get involved in committees in your own area. Get involved in committees. Like I was on the Health Insurance Advisory Committee. I didn't know anything about health insurance, but from a finance and administration point of view, man, there's all sorts of things we have to understand about changing your plan and being more efficient and, negotiating user fees and premiums and all that. That was really good. That was a great learning opportunity. I was on it for like 5 years. So I learned a ton. But I wasn't with the regular student affairs people. I was with finance and administration. And, so I think Mindy's right. But in addition to the committee work, cross-pollinating so that you're learning finance, you're learning other things that are outside your expertise.
Thank you so much. So I do want to shift now to some gender specific things. Now, I know you love all your students, men and women and everything, but I know both of you have a passion around, because there's, in college campuses, you actually, Deneece, have more females, but in general, as a state, and there's a question on this, and I have a question on this, as a state, we need to work with women and girls differently. There's a lot of disparities. We're not looked at as a good state for women's equality and some different things. So I know each of you, in addition to all your other passions, have a passion around, helping girls and women. And so where did that come from? I mean, Deneece, you and I have worked together for so many years, and you've been interested in that. And why is that a particular one of your passions?
I'm trying to remember where that started. I think for me, a couple of things. One is when I was at the University of Utah, I was in a sorority, and I was suddenly surrounded by a very diverse, very bright women from all across the country. And so it all of a sudden opened up this world about women as leaders and women as thinkers and women as doers. So that was one thing. But I also think early on in my career, the National Association, NASPA, which is a student affairs association, had knowledge communities, and they were kind of like affinity groups. And I early on joined the Women in Student Affairs group. And so it surfaced issues around women, whether it's pay equality or, how do you build confidence? And we've got a question in the thing about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
So, it started materializing some of these issues women grapple with. And it resonated with me. I had experienced those issues, and then I was overcoming those things. And so it just stayed with me from an early time in my career. And I think it's been fun to watch the women's leadership in the state expand. It's still not where it needs to be.
No.
But it's been fun to watch the very intentional practice that you have done, you know, the Women's Leadership Institute, UN, all of these organizations that are trying to elevate women in politics, in CEO C-suites. That's been fun to watch over my career and just be part of that, right? Be part of the elevation of that has been fun.
Thank you for all your support through the years too. You always respond to my emails, and I try not to bug you too much, but what I loved a few months ago, I can't even remember how many months ago, is that I was with Mindy down at SUU and was able to do a few events down there specifically about a bolder way forward, but giving an update of the status of women too. So it was fun to meet with so many of your faculty and some of your students, faculty, staff, and students, Mindy. But yeah, any thoughts about where those interests kind of arose with you?
You know, as I said, I was raised by a strong mother.
Yes.
I always felt like I belonged in the room. I was raised to do that. Now, don't get me wrong, there have been plenty of times where I was not welcome or it was tense. But I was raised to think that I belonged in the room. So I came into the room and I tried to be part of what was happening instead of making people uncomfortable because it was totally different. And I think that's how I tried to integrate. It's been interesting to watch because it's always a chess match and trying to figure out where everybody fits in and play the right role to not upset the apple cart, but still help people be comfortable with me being in the position that I was or am now. And even now, and I have a fantastic cabinet, but it's very different than it was even 5 years ago. And it's taking all of us getting used to that. But I do it to watch our female students on campus and the faculty and staff, the young daughters of faculty and staff, to watch them interact with me or look at where I am. They finally have somebody that looks like them, and I don't take that for granted. And I am trying to open all the doors that I can and pull women up and pull women in. Our cabinet has a lot more opportunities for women than has typically been the case. And I try to open all the doors that I can.
Yeah, thank you so much. So there is in the Q&A, and I'm not watching the chat. So hopefully, Deneece, are you watching the chat? I'm watching the Q&A.
Yeah, can I jump in here? So there's a question about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Strategies to overcome it. And this is from someone who has come from pivoting a career path with a 10-year break raising kids, and then trying to re-enter the workforce and having a hard time finding a place to land. And it's a great question. And I'll try to talk a little bit about it. I never stepped away from my career, so I don't have that experience. I can't talk to it, but I know a lot, but I work with students all the time that are coming back as moms and as divorcees and as single parents and all of these things that life has happened to them, whether for good or not so good. And they find themselves back here and they find their confidence in lots of different ways. But I will say imposter syndrome,
it is real.
It's very real. And honestly, it's very real for women, but it's also real for men, young men in their career. I mean, it's just real for every young person, I think. I think women, it's amplified a little bit because of the disparity of leadership and role models. But I think what I have found, and Mindy and others were part of this, I did a little survey about 6 months ago. I was going to do a keynote, and I asked really great women leaders, what they thought were really critical to their success. And the three things that came out of that were confidence, courage, and connections. And they are interrelated. And so the way you get confidence is by being courageous.
Yeah.
Stepping into something, volunteering, taking a job, introducing yourself to someone in the hallway, speaking up at a meeting where someone notices you and then says, that was really smart what you just said. Listen to that the feedback you're getting about your good worth, and that will build your confidence, but you're not going to build it unless you're courageous.
But you have to believe that though, too.
Yeah.
You're talking about listen to it, but believe it. Don't doubt it.
Yes. And make the connections with other women who you trust and know well, who can teach you and can also bolster your confidence. I mean, we know we all do that for each other, right? We talk about each other at different meetings and try to make connections and say, oh, you should read Dr. Madsen's research paper on this, or you should talk to President Benson about that. Like, we intentionally elevate other women through connections. So I think those 3 C's for this woman coming back in, find ways to build your confidence. You probably have amazing skills that are translatable from your days as a mom. Translate those skills, tell people about them, step in and be courageous. And then you'll get confidence, and then you'll find a place to land.
So to me, I want to say that is so critical. Also, what's critical is to help change other people around you and the systems, because we as women that's a important piece. We can lean in, we can understand, but also being part of, not but, I'm trying to change that a lot, of helping people understand. And there's a question that said, here's the question: how do we do a better job as women leaders of helping those we work with actually understand that there are challenges in the state of Utah for women? So, I think we have to do both. I'm working in both spaces of helping women themselves, but then also helping other people, understand the issues. We have kind of a scarcity mentality here and a pushback, and some people still think things like the gender pay gap is a myth when there's so much evidence. So, Deneece, any thoughts about that? Or Mindy, do you want to jump in? Any thoughts?
Deneece, I'll let you jump in.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm not sure I know exactly what you're asking. Let me, I guess, first of all, again, go back to trust. If you build trust with people, you can call out deficiencies without alienating them, right? So the longer I become in my career, the easier it is to say to someone who's trying to defend perhaps a not so great policy, is to say, that's a great perspective. And let me tell you about my experience with that as a woman, or let me tell you about my daughter's experience in that, and so I think you don't want to be mean, you don't want to be dismissive or disrespectful, but if you've built that well of trust that Mindy talked about, you can say, I appreciate your point of view, but I want to share with you my point of view. And I think it's a bit different than your experience. And you can kind of start countering some of that kind of systemic, like just norm that isn't, it's just built, it's constructed, and we can dismantle it. I think you have to have some trust to do that, but I don't think you should shy away from trying to figure out how to do it. Because then we're complicit, right? Then we're helping sturdy it up, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah, I know. I think that is such a key piece of advice. Not shying away, but talking about it. I would add to that, I have to say, is just, this will not surprise either of you, but know the data. Like, know the reports, read some of the reports, know what you're talking about, not just emotions. Some of them are really emotional issues, right? And I'm sure you get that all the time, not just around these issues, but people coming to you having such passion and emotion in certain things, and then having to shift there. Mindy, I don't know if you're watching or have another question you'd like to jump on, or any comments?
Well, I would add to that I've always been a believer that actions speak louder than words. And I think as soon as I complain, as Deneece said, about a policy or something going on, then that's all some of my colleagues here is quit complaining. And I believe if actions speak louder than words, and I do my job and do my job well, and then can open the door to those conversations like Deneece said, but my experience has been different and you need to know that. That's different than just loudly complaining. It's building that trust. It's them knowing that you do a great job at leading or whatever your assignment or project or job was, and they trust you because of that. And then hear, okay, even though she's great, she's faced some problems.
Yeah.
And I would also like to add on the imposter syndrome. Oh my goodness, Deneece, you said it's young people in their careers. I am 52 and feel the imposter syndrome every darn day, right? And I can say I've always been raised to believe I belong in the room, but at the same time, that voice is saying, should you, could you, somebody's going to question you. Was that the right thing? You're horrible. All of that is in your head, and you need to separate fact from fiction and recognize what is that voice versus you're obviously in the room and you're in the position, or you're being given different assignments, or you're being given opportunities. So somebody has confidence in you, even if you don't have it in yourself. And then find a colleague who doesn't just create an echo chamber, but can help reassure you when you have those moments.
And will give you, I mean, the research supports this so much, and I've seen it, that just having people tell you you're great we don't believe that mostly, but
I don't like that.
Finding people that will give you, that will tell you the truth about positive things, neutral things, things that maybe you could have done better. And that's the most helpful thing in development. So I love that. I'm going to shift. I had a question, but I'm seeing one in the Q&A as well. So the question is, how do you approach someone for mentorship? Before I give this to you two, I've studied mentorship, I've studied all these topics. But one of the things that I decided to do early in my career is I never asked anybody ever for mentorship. I'm just going to put it out there. What I did is, if I wanted to learn and grow, I volunteered on a committee to help someone, because and that's the only space I have for mentorship these days, are with people that are volunteering and I'm working with already, because they're doing work in the space that I'm doing. I've had probably 1,000 people through the years ask me to be their mentor. And I basically just say, hey, if you want to work with us and be part of the movement. So that would be my advice to people. But any thoughts about the mentorships? What are some steps beyond what I said? Mindy, let's start with you.
This may freak people out, but sometimes I think we get stuck in formal, intensive mentorship relationships. And if we're not having that, then we're not having a mentor experience.
We think that it limits us.
We think that, and we can work our way up to that, and we can be that, or we can seek that out. But sometimes women just taking time to do something like this, or to go out to lunch with somebody that said, hey, I have some questions about my career path. Could we spend a half hour or an hour together? I'm always willing to do that. I can't probably mentor somebody on a daily or weekly basis right now.
But coaching, that's more coaching. You can do a one-time coaching. I do quite a bit of that.
And I'm always willing to be in touch. So I think we need to get this formal, intensive relationship out of our head, as that's the only way to be a mentor. And Deneece has heard me say this, but when I was the interim president and had absolutely no intention of applying for this job, there's actually somebody on this who pestered me every day until I said I was applying for this job. And she got in my head. But Senator Milner, who had been a president, we worked together in the session that year, and she finally said, let's you and I meet and get everybody else out of the room. And she took an hour with me and said, why are you afraid to apply, and what is stopping you? And I credit her with being one of the biggest mentors in my life, and it changed my life. And that was 1 hour that she asked the questions and told me that she had confidence in me. Sometimes that's all we need, is somebody having confidence in us.
And sometimes it's only 5 or 10 minutes. Sometimes you can have a discussion or an interaction on email or whatever, but those coaching elements. So
Yeah.
sometimes you call everything mentorship, but there's mentors, there's sponsors, there's different kinds of things. I'm
Does that-
watching our time. And so Deneece, did you?
I just want to jump
comment?
in with one thing, and then I want to give your attention if you can get to them. There's two in the chat, but what I would say about that, I couldn't agree with Mindy more. It was so well articulated. The other thing I would say is if you really need mentorship and there's someone you're watching that you want to be mentored by, my experience is that having a specific area you want to be mentored in and questions you want answered is easier than just saying, will you mentor me?
Yes.
I don't even know what that means. Like, what do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about emotional intelligence? Do you want to talk about imposter syndrome? Do you want to talk about career path and what might be the best?
Yeah.
So being specific about what you're trying to learn as a mentee, I think is helpful. The two in the chat, one, Susan, if you have time, one is a 21-year-old who's in a master's program who's encountering that her young age and being a pretty girl affects the way leadership is taken and perceived. And the other is about asking us what's a career accomplishment we're most proud of. So just if you can fit those in, I want to make sure we attend to that.
Well, let me ask a couple of questions. And I can't help but not comment on the one about for women, for men, the research through the decades has said for men, if you are more handsome, you're looked at as a better leader. For women, it's actually struggles. If you're too beautiful, then people really judge, men and women, not just men and women judge you worse. And so some of the literature said if you're kind of middle of the road, that's as if we can choose that, right? It is so interesting. So sometimes if you're, perceived as this beautiful, it is a challenge in some ways for leadership, and we have to kind of navigate that differently. I want to ask you a couple questions I for sure want to get to. One is this: what books have you read? What resources have you that you have found really helpful in general, but even as a woman and developing your your leadership abilities and so forth? What couple of books or resources of some kind, trainings, would you suggest? Either one. Who wants to start?
I'll jump in. The book that I keep going back to, and I've read many since, but Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg enlightened me quite a bit of sometimes it's us as women holding ourselves back and waiting for a man or somebody to invite or to ask us. And I go back to, she has little nuggets of wisdom that I utilize quite often. And then Leadership as an Art, it's an old book by Max Dupree. I really like some of the leadership philosophies that are in there. And those are a couple of that I do. And I would add to your point of pretty leaders, I think the biggest mistake women make is not being exactly authentically who we are. We finally get to leadership, and the first thing we do is lead like our male counterparts, because we think that's what we have to do to own the room. And that is why women immediately get a bad name. Go in and lead how you are authentically, whether you're pretty or nurturing or not nurturing or whatever it is. Go lead like that and help the room get comfortable with a very different looking and feeling leader.
Thank you so much. And I just want to note that is easier to do in certain kinds of industries than others, depending on how it's really challenging. Especially if you're in that top group of women leaders, you're just breaking through that glass ceiling. So it is, the more that we can do that, definitely the better.
Can I just say two things about that? One is there's somebody that's kind of echoing and saying, yeah, I've been, how come men refer to me as their daughter or blah, 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 that stuff. Okay, some of it is just young. You're young. Love it. You're young. I wish I was young, right? So just don't be mad about that. But I'd say two things. One is model that behavior in meetings. So call other colleagues more properly And if someone refers to another person that way, correct them, because you're not correcting them about you, you're correcting them about someone else. It goes over better. The other thing I would say is bring in like Women's Leadership Institute and the work you've done coming into companies. Then
Yes.
it's not you bringing it to their attention.
Yes.
It's an outside source and it's not as threatening. And that can really help kind of make people aware of their language. I mean, we're a very paternalistic state. And
Yeah.
so when men see young women, they think about their daughters, and that's just the way we're socialized. And we just have to help educate them that at a certain point you're a professional and they need to help, help make that. The two books I would say, one is actually more article than book. It's Deborah Meyerson, who teaches at Stanford, has talked a lot about being a tempered radical, which
Yeah.
for me is a really important, because I like to make change and I have to make change at the pace that people are comfortable with change. And so trying to temper your radical ideas, I don't think they're radical, but some people do. That's one. And the other, what I would say, is The Art of Possibility. It's really about, it's just about possibility in every part of your life, not just your career, but kind of taking the blinders off of who you are and what you can be and thinking about possibilities. That opens up leadership options as well. For me, at least it did.
I love that. So we do a follow-up email to everybody that's RSVP'd for this event, and we'll put links to those in that follow-up email. I do want to ask both of you, as both of you know, at the Utah Women in Leadership Project, we have launched, and now we have hundreds of partners and thousands of people engaged already around the state, what's called A Bolder Way Forward. And it's really a 7-year societal change movement to ensure that more Utah girls and women thrive in any setting. And I have to say that I say almost in every speech that when more girls and women thrive, families thrive. I mean, it's not a scarcity mentality. We can lift boys and men too. And by having more empowered and educated women, we do that. So my question to both of you, and I know each of you knows about the Bolder Way Forward, what are two of the most important things that you think needs to be done in Utah to really make that happen? And we're working in 18 different areas, from health to entrepreneurship to violence against women, all different things. Any thoughts about some changes you would be excited to be part of, or think would be really helpful to lift girls and women? You're in deep thought, Deneece. I know you're like, just to pick two, huh?
Yeah, it's really tricky. I would say two things, I think. One is I really love the encouragement people are getting around women running for political office and making policy at the state level and local level. Women approach problems differently. And if we can have more local power and more statewide power with women, I think some of the policy decisions that affect all women will change. So that's the first thing I would wish we could do better. And the second thing is, I think women are still often putting families and children first before their education. And I don't think you need to do that. And in fact, I would argue that if you're in a loving partnership, go get your education and wait 2 years and then get married and start your family, because your education is going to be really critical for you throughout your life. The woman that talked about coming back into the workplace after raising your kids, great, raise your kids, but having that education and making room for it and a priority just will, in my opinion, open so many more doors later in life if you want to go into a career.
I love that. Thank you. Mindy.
I think honest, open, continual communication, which is what you're doing, and education, educate. We have to find a non-threatening way to continue to educate. And I believe that you are doing that, and that will move us forward. I think one thing that I would add is we all dream of the white picket fence dream of family and job and career and everything is perfect. I had that dream in college and I have never been married and I never had kids. You have to work on yourself as a person and develop your whole person, because you don't know what your future holds or if you are married and have to come back in the workforce and your husband or partner has a health problem, just think about continually developing you to be the best person that you can be, whether you stay home and take care of your family and teach your kids those things, or you enter the workforce. Either one of it is valuable to have the best you that you can be.
Excellent. And we just have 2 minutes, 15 seconds. Deneece, one final thought. Like
Believe in
really
yourself.
profound. Really
Believe in
profound.
yourself. That's it. Believe in yourself.
Okay. Excellent. Mindy.
Believe in yourself and believe in each other. Some of the toughest critics I've faced are other women. If we are going to do that to each other, how do we expect the rest of society to act? So believe in each other and take care of each other and take care of yourself.
Such good advice. Thank you to both of you for joining us today, and thanks to all of you that joined in as well. I also want to thank the Utah Education Network, UEN, for their sponsorship, also the John M. Huntsman School of Business and USU Extension. So thank you so much to all for joining us today. Have a wonderful
Thank you for the
rest of your
opportunity.
day.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for having us. It's been a pleasure. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.